I'm Paul Edwards. I'm the author of the Mourner's Woods book series, and first and foremost, a monster kid. Tonight, I'm watching The Man from Planet X from 1951. I would love to tell you who plays the Man from Planet X, but we don't actually know for sure. There have been competing rumors about exactly what actor took this role. Some people say that it was Paul Golden. Others say that it was an actor named Billy Curtis. But neither one of these rumors is verifiable. And because the role of the Man from Planet X was not credited along with the other actors in the film, we don't actually know for sure who played the Man from Planet X. An appropriate mystery for a character called the Man from Planet X. Now, what happens in this film is that astronomers discover a new heavenly body and dub it Planet X. And it's on an approach toward Earth. Incidentally, Planet X was what they originally called Pluto when they first discovered it 100 years ago. But this Planet X is going to pass right near the Earth, although not crash into us. And the point at which Planet X will pass the closest to us is a point out on the Scottish moors. A scientist calculates that this is going to be the place nearest to Planet X when it gets here. And so he takes up residence in an abandoned Scottish castle on the edge of the moors, where it's foggy and creepy and bleak. He's studying the approach of Planet X and waiting for the day that it arrives. Unfortunately, as Planet X gets closer, we get a visitor. A single person space capsule lands in the moors, and it has a single occupant, a misshapen humanoid person in a metal spacesuit, complete with ray gun in a holster and an air tank with his own planet's kind of air that he's using to breathe. When the Man from Planet X first encounters human beings, he's skittish around us and, draws his weapon, but soon discovers that we're not immediately dangerous to him and doesn't take any more hostile action toward us. The problem is that the human beings cannot communicate with the Man from Planet X. He doesn't understand our language. He doesn't seem to have any kind of speech of his own. So they lead him back to this Scottish castle to try to question him and see if they can develop some method of communicating with him. It turns out that the secret to communicating with him is musical notes, a plot device that was used 26 years later in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. Now, what develops is that the Man from Planet X is here because his planet is in desperate trouble. His people are trapped on this planet that's careening through the universe, sort of like the Moonbase Alpha crew in Space 1999. And they have no hope to survive other than to jump ship when their planet passes as close as it will to the Earth, and they want to come down here and get off of their doomed planet. Now, this is really my biggest question about the film. If their whole species depends on their survival on this exodus from Planet X to Earth, why did they send only one guy down to prepare the way? Shouldn't they have sent a whole army? I think the answer to that is that this is an Edgar G. Ulmer film. He was the king of Poverty Row directors. And it being an Edgar G. Ulmer film, you already could tell that they would only be able to afford one single Man from Planet X. So I think that's the answer to that question. This film really strikes a balance between science fiction and horror. On the one hand, you have the setting, the Scottish moors. They're creepy, foggy, it's always dark, even in the daytime. and there's a feeling of isolation and dread out on the moors. In contrast, you have the actual man from Planet X and his spaceship that he's come here in, which are, perfect examples of atomic age scientific advancement. And so there's a contrast and a tension between the science fiction element and the horror element. These really come into play when the spaceman is in the Scottish castle, which is, centuries old pile of rocks, and contrasts very nicely to his high-tech outfit. Actually, this film was sort of an indicator of what would happen throughout the 1950s in terms of what kind of science fiction we would be getting. This was 1951, remember? And in the decade that was to come, in the 1950s, almost all science fiction movies were combinations of horror and science fiction. Think about the staples of 50s sci-fi, okay? Giant bug movies, alien invasion movies, flying saucer movies, mad scientists developing, monstrous creations out of the atom age technology. Basically, horror was intertwined with science fiction for the next 10 to 12 years at least. And you can see an early example of this in The Man from Planet X. Not the most famous example, not the best example, but a serviceable, spooky example of a science fiction horror story of the 1950s. Listen, if you like classic monsters and vintage horror, you'll love my book series, the Mourner's Woods books. They're available on Amazon.com, 99 cents each. I have all different monsters in different books, and check them out. Thanks for letting me talk to you about The Man from Planet X, and I'll see you in Mourner's Woods.